The plaintiff was a 19-year-old Hispanic man who was working on an industrial project at a major university here in Southern California. He had been hired by the cheapest vendor to do the work and had not been properly trained. The vendor was somebody who was not on site at the time of the accident. Who was on site was an employee of the college. And what happened was the young man stuck his hand into a live electrical part, resulting in fairly catastrophic injuries, while the employee of the college was watching, who said nothing. In addition to the man, he was married, he had a 19-year-old wife, and we had the employer who was in on a cross complaint from the college itself. So I was dealing with four completely different emotions. The first emotion was the man who had been injured, who was fatalistic. There is no other way to put it. You could say it was cultural. You could say it was who he was as an individual. But I had to break through that to get some emotion from him in order for the case to settle, because he'd simply shrug his shoulders for everything else that was said in the first instance. And I know we've talked a lot about trying to tamp down emotions, but there are times as a mediator where I need to invigorate emotions. And this was one of those times. The second person who was involved was his wife. And as fatalistic as he was, she was just boiling mad, as you could imagine. This was her husband, and he was going to be compromised for the rest of his life. And with her, it was a matter of trying to work through that emotion so that we could get resolution and convince her that regardless of whether the case went to trial or whether we settled, he was going to have to deal with his disability going forward. Person number three was very interesting. He was the poor college employee who stood by while this gentleman got injured. And why did he do this? He was from the Midwest. He was of German extraction. And he told me privately that he had always been raised not to question authority. And he felt that the contractor must have gone over what was going on at the facility with the young man, and that it was he, the state employee, who was wrong in thinking that the electrical part was live. So with him, frankly, I had to talk him off the floor. My concern was, frankly, that he could be a suicide case down the road because he felt awful and had a great deal of difficulty dealing with that. And the fourth was the contractor himself. The contractor was in on a cross complaint from the college and was absolutely arrogant. In his mind, he did nothing wrong. He told that kid once, he told him 1,000 times, don't touch that part. And with him, we had to get him to a point where he was able to concede that he was part of the problem and needed to be part of the resolution. It took a long time. It took patience. And frankly, at the end, we were able to resolve it with everybody shaking hands and a fair number of tears. And I don't mean just by the wife or the plaintiff, tears all around that this was a very difficult situation and that resolution before Christmas would be in everybody's interest, it being the holiday season. They'd be a lot happier if they would be able to get beyond the litigation itself. I'm Jeff Kravitz, expert mediator in Los Angeles. I solve problems. Let's talk about yours.